Hello, this is a video update of my FYP that I promised I would hand in for today. So let's get down to it. So what I've been focusing on the past few weeks is making sure that the tech itself has been working, as I've had a lot of issues with normal maps and really just making the meshes work. And what I've learned over the weeks is that this is actually the better way to do it, because one of my previous tracks, which was textured and all that, actually wasn't correct for what I wanted to do, the actual mesh. So what I've been doing is creating the meshes, not the full high poly ones, but bases that can be high polyed, so they're not optimized as a low poly mesh. So they can be turbo smoothed and all that from the meshes that I have. So anyway, the meshes that I've put in, I've tested them to make sure that they actually work with the tech that I have. And now that I know that they work, really the state of modeling can progress. And fortunately, they're mostly just simple meshes, so it shouldn't take too long to get it up to speed. So let's get down to the actual tech and the track itself. So this is our changing track. Let's see. I believe this is the next point. There we go, yeah. So as you can see, it changes, and we can also bank it if we go to this is the third element of this track. Go down to the bank. Ooh, there we go. If I do the right... Don't do that. Let's get that back to normals. I mean, there you go. See, so it twists and turns like so. So let's just leave it like that, actually. So if we create a new point, it follows on. If we create a new point, it follows on. We can keep going and going and going. If we want to loop the track, there's a tick box to just loop it, and it does it for us. When creating the track, it obviously stretches, so you want to keep points at a relatively even space. So it's best to use the grid and correct grid snapping so that you get an accurate track that you want. So let's get rid of that. So at the moment it all looks the same. These look horrid, there's no unwraps applied to these panels. But the tech is there, so let's take a look. At the moment, this is one of the 3 tracks that I've implemented. This is the main track that has most of the fun features. So if we go to these editable settings, we can change what kind of panels are shown. So this track, between these 2 spline points, this is element 0, this track, and it has 2 panels that we can edit. So if we change it, that becomes this panel. We do this one, it becomes power pads. As you can see, the power pads, they kind of angle inwards, so in terms of like game balance, if you were to drive down, the right one is a lot shorter than the left, so you would probably only want to use this on a straight spline. But it's there and it snaps in, you don't go into the meshes and place it, it's there. So as long as you use the options and meshes wisely, it should all work. And we have the generator that I did previously. And if we go above, there's nothing there because nothing occupies that slot in the actual track generator blueprint. So let's put that to that, and it's the same for this one. So we could change it to... Oh, well, we'll come back to that in a second. so we can go to here, and then for the next one, we can go, I want a power up pad, and I want another one of those. And for these ones, they're going to be closed, so we'll leave out element 2, and for number 3, and I want more generators, and stuff like that. So you can quickly edit the track so that it always looks different. You can also edit these side boxes, so if we go to the first element, or rather element 0, because that's how programming works. If we, there we go. So we have a screen here where we can display arrows, that would be done in the shader. We have a smaller screen where I would imagine I call it the sponsor screen, so sponsors would fly up because it's too small for actual messages, but it adds like a bit of in-game like lore, and like tech companies would actually be running this place, so that's where we could put sponsors going across, and regular wires, and we can do it individually for each one. So I want wires on this one. For this one, I'm gonna have some sponsor screens, I think, because we need to have some sponsors there. and it fits in. The actual spline itself is pretty small, so make sure that you do it correctly. But, you know, it all curves, it's all there. The meshes themselves have the correct amount of lines so that it follows. So if we go to test meshes, right screen, and if we turn on wireframe, you can see that, it's a bit hard because it's purple, but you can see that there's lines here so that it curves with the track. So let's get out of that. And now we can go to like the actual track types itself. So if we change the track type, currently these options are tied to the first track type that I have, which is the main one. And then if we go to this one, we have more of a startup one where it doesn't work very well on a curved one, so actually let's do it over here. If we just make a few straight lines, and we go to the end. Let's turn these to 2, I believe. Yes, no, that's the one we want. So a nice little straight line. I could imagine like this being a start up, like where you actually start. Because looking at research and like for previous games, usually it was kind of like a left-right thing rather than in a line. So I just tried to emulate it from there. Actually, it'd be this. Anyway, we'll go to the next track type. So the other track type was the textured one that I had. I've redone it. Let's go to the start, element 0. I've redone it because when I was trying to fit it originally with this, it was too thin. So, and trying to change it to match it, there was no point. I'd have to redo the texture and all that, so I thought I'll just redo it. And so this is how I came to realize I need to make sure all the meshes work and integrate before I can really move on. Anyway, one other cool thing that, whilst it's not a very big detail, it can be implemented, which I've worked out. So we can have, depending on the next mesh and the previous mesh, we can add caps. So by caps I mean that you can see like here where the squares, it kind of just ends. If I change this, we change the next one, which element is this? Oh, we can also, to help, we can add spline points above. So I want spline point 3, because that makes things a little easier when you have so many points. So if we change this to 1, this one's 1, but if we change it to 2, you can see that it follows it along. Because it's not very clear here, but what's happening is that actually the track itself, it's ending where that line is, but I've managed to add an additional piece of mesh, because if that wasn't there, there would actually be a gap, because as you can see, if the track floor follows this line, we have all this like extruded space that if there were no caps for it, then we'd be seeing through the mesh and into the floor, and that doesn't look good. So by detecting what mesh is ahead of it, we can cap it off, and on the same on this side. So if element 3 was track type 2, it's capped, as you can see there. So that way, whilst it's very small here, we can, if we go to the back, at the moment I haven't implemented it on this one, but it's very simple. We can just extend it and cap it, depending on what the previous and the next track is. So we can, you know, instead of having it quite clear cut where the next track is, because you can see this line, we can kind of interweave them so it looks a bit better. But yeah, that's the current system that I was putting into place today, and it works fine. So also we can add some other stuff. So we can add a message projector. If track 2, you're not working. I was just testing this a moment ago. Well, it gives us a good chance to work it out. If we go into track generator, it's a little messy, but alas. I would imagine it's in the construction script. If we go to message projector, antenna is going in, it's connected. If it's true, message projector, it's antenna. I realise now. I realise the error. It's because it was not on the correct track type, because they're only linked to this track type right now, because that's what they fit. But it could be fitted to the others with the same mesh, with some alterations. That's why it was not working. But yeah, there's some work into it. It's very messy right now because prototype, I want to make sure, I want to see the actual strands that it works, so this would all perhaps be a function, and then you change the mesh in and out depending on the integer. But it's a bit messy right now to make sure that it all works. This is based off a very helpful UE4 string tutorial on splines tracks, and I've managed to work upon that to add additional features and to add some other stuff. Okay. So one thing that tutorial didn't cover that I had to work out was if I were to add a mesh to the spline, it would actually create across the whole spline. So in this case, if there's a track piece here, and from this point to this point, and that's the spline. And if I were to add a different mesh that wasn't the entire length of the track, it wouldn't work. So I've done a very cheeky thing, a little bit of a bandage of, and I've added some polygons. 2 polygons in fact. If we can, let's go to the actual mesh itself. So if we go to generate 2, actually no, you can see a polygon here, and on the other side, this is the limit of the track itself. So when it actually generates the mesh, the limits will match the track, and so it's going to put it in the correct slot and bend it the correct way. So it very cheaply does it for the cost of 2 polygons. Okay, what else do I have to add? Alright, so I believe that pretty much covers it. So let's mess around with it. The message protector could be like a direction, a warning, more sponsors, add stuff in here. But yeah, it's a fully playable track. Collision would be done with a static mesh using the go into here. There's no collision attached to it right now, but I know how to do that. It would be using UCXs and making sure it's quite simple and matches it. For here, it would just be a flat plane because the vehicles themselves float, which makes it a lot easier. So collision is actually fairly simple to implement. So that's the current state of things right now. What I'll be working on over the next week is actually focusing on the models and making sure that the normal maps actually work, because that's the main issue that I have. And once I can get that to work, I can get the textures done and we can move on from there. So yeah, that is the current state of this project. The tech is pretty much implemented, it's just doing the modelling, and there's a lot of simple models. Once these models have been implemented, I can imagine just keep adding meshes, keep adding stuff, and getting feedback from those and improving upon them. That's pretty much it, so thanks for listening, and I hope this has been informative. Goodbye.